Hello and welcome to Türkiye Talks. As usual, we are going to talk about recent international developments in and around Turkey. Really hot days have been experienced in Syria, in north-west part of Syria. I am joined by Murat Aslan, Dr. Murat Aslan. Thank you very much for joining. And Kadir Ustun from Washington. Kadir, hi to you. It's been almost more than a week, and we have seen movements in northwest of Syria, especially in Afrin. The HTS group, HTS, they moved to Afrin, and even they got the control of some villages there, and many people started to think about this region, what's going to happen. Is HTS getting control of the northwest of Syria? What will Turkey do? What will other forces do? Because this organization has radical intentions, and we know what's happening in Idlib, in other places. So I'd like to start with you, Murat Aslan. What happened? Why do you think HTS moved to there? Their idea, do you think, is to challenge Turkey, or they have other expectations? Do you think they have power to control that region? And do you think Turkey is ignoring or preparing itself for a reaction?
First, thanks for having me in this show, because it's really a privilege to address such an issue with two distinguished journalists and think tanker. Well, Afrin is really a specific place that can not be, entrapped in wars. On the other hand, Afrin is just at the core of debates and concerns, mainly in the minds of Europeans and also the Syrians. And Afrin is something really important for Turkish strategy in Syria. Well, just remember the latest developments, but just period to that, we have to touch what happened in June. On June, HTS had actually started another assault or another movement or mobilization directly touching Afrin's south. But right after that, maybe after consultations through the intelligence organization, well, they withdrew back. But this time they did it again. And they surpassed Afrin and also touched some villages of Azaz city at the north that heavily IDPs were accommodated. In this picture, if you go through why this happened, first we must see the concrete reason that can be framed by an individual escalation. There were rumors on the ground that an SNA faction had killed an individual with affiliation to another group, along with his wife and pregnant, and that's why radicals in this region suddenly erupted a voice, directly protesting the other SNA groups, Turkey, and also exploited it. And right after this point, HTS just read the overall picture and tried to exploit exactly what's going on, because the one that had mobilized right after this incident, or we don't know exactly what's happened because there's no investigation on who did what actually. Well, HTS targeted the one that was mobilized. And think that right after this line, the armed groups, local armed groups in the region started calculations on how to dominate the region, or how to increase their sphere of influence, or how to gain more in terms of incomes, etc. That means at the micro level, armed groups, either HTS or other members of Syrian National Army, started to just augment their position by expanding their geographical sphere of influence. And right after then, HTS First, advanced to Afrin city, which is really special in terms of demography, and most people forget exactly who is living over there right now. This is one thing. And then advanced their troops towards Azaz, challenging the Syrian National Army's some basic groups, not directly challenging the overall and the all Syrian National Army elements, but allied themselves with some and opposed the others. Well, Afrin is somewhere that needs to be scrutinized first, pending to demography, as you know. Mostly Europeans call it as a Kurdish, pocket, but it's not. There are many identities and ethnicities are currently living. And the most vulnerable ones are the marginalized. And among these, they are Yazidis. Why? These are not the Muslims in the region, and in the meantime, mostly targeted by ISIS or Hayat-ul Sham or the other radical-like elements. So this advance, just pushed ourselves to review exactly what could happen to the marginalized in Afrin city. On the other hand, right after this eruption of limited violence, they did nothing in terms of challenging the local identities. Interestingly, Hayat-ul Sham started a strategic communications efforts in the region. How? They first selected exactly who are needy and started distributing aid. Well, it was totally a sort of image-making effort afterwards. So, and a sort of attack exploiting a significant incident appeared to be a strategic communication effort of HTS in Afrin. I don't know if it's enough just to tell exactly what happened, in Afrin, and also to some sort, Azaz.
Yeah, it's good for the start. Maybe we can a little move on Turkey's reaction, because the news of Hayat Sham approaching to Afrin and Turkish border was very surprising for many in Turkey, and people just waited to understand, waited to see what's going on. Really, we should maybe underline the fact that this group is not a legitimate organization from Turkish perspective, and their actions, terrorist actions in different places, has also always been a concern for Turkey. So, Kadir, what was the reaction in the West? Because because Turkey was very cautious to respond to this crisis-like situation. Maybe it can be misinterpreted in the Western circles. I don't know if you have anything to talk about that.
I mean, some Syria watchers have talked about this, and every time this area makes it to the news, or especially on social media, I don't think there was a lot of coverage in the national media, but on social media, oftentimes people try to depict HTS as kind of close to Turkey, or Turkey somehow allowing them to move in and stuff like that. So those are some of the debates, and we probably want to get back to Dr. Aslan about this and ask what Turkey tries to accomplish. This is an area controlled by, pro-Turkey Syrian, opposition forces, which are, there are several groups, as Professor Aslan mentioned. They are in, often fighting each other and trying to sort of control territory, and this recent eruption, like Professor Aslan said, appears to have happened because of some sort of assassination of an opposition leader. So, but yeah, in the national media here in the U.S., it hasn't drawn a lot of attention, but Syria watchers are definitely watching that, and Turkey has, in terms of, we are going to talk about broader trends later on, but controlling Idlib, making sure that more refugees do not come to Turkey, that's a priority for Turkey, and this is a region that Turkey kind of indirectly controls and has the ability to move its military to control or at least shape things on the ground. And the other perception or other argument, again, Professor Aslan already mentioned, saying that this is a Kurdish populated area and Turks are basically controlling this area against the wishes of the Kurds and stuff like that, without making the distinction between PKK and Kurds. So perhaps I can, redirect this question to Professor Aslan. Like, how does Turkey see HTS and in relation to other groups on the ground? And in turn, of course, like independent of Turkey's approach to different groups, there is the concern about, things flaring up, things becoming not controllable or something like that. Basically, more instability in a corner near the Turkish border, which would I assume would be against Turkish interests. So how does Turkish policy see these groups, and when they fight, what do they do? And we've seen on social media some Turkish tanks actually move into the city. What is the goal for Turkey?
Well, first, I think we should first understand exactly what the actual and official stance of Turkey and also Turkish position in Syria is. Turkey recognizes HTS as a terror network and a radical terror network. It's an official declaration recognized by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So we have to keep this in mind. The first thing is this. And the second thing, Turkey is in Idlib thanks to Astana process. And the mission is not a combat-oriented mission, but rather than it's an observation task. That means if something happens in terms of violating the terms of Astana Spirit, let me say, or relevant papers inked by Russia, Iran, and Turkey, well, Turkey reports it to the other actors and then expects a reaction in terms of mending exactly who did what in terms of challenging the status quo. On the other hand, up until now, Turkey does have lessons learned from the past. What was that? The first thing, Turkey was complaining about the attacks and assaults of Russia and Iran-backed Assad regime to Idlib, and suffered a great effort to protect the region, including people, and also HTS benefited from it. Turkey was just in between them. The second thing, we have also Syrian National Army factions in Idlib, and it does have a composition that's really complex that nobody can easily draw a map depicting exactly which area is dominated by which armed group. In this sense, HTS started this campaign targeting Afrin and beyond Afrin towards Azaz, and it's a question mark in terms of Turkish stance and also Turkish interests. First, let me just delineate one thing really important. When HTS started distributing food and other humanitarian aid to locals in Afrin, that means they delivered a signal to the overall globe that they want to be a permanent force, not only in Idlib, but beyond. The second thing, well, when clashes erupted among the Syrian National Army and HTS elements, or pro-HTS elements, which are not actually a member of this group, Turkey was there, but Turkish soldiers are not harmed. So there was a really fine-tuning on how to engage in the region, either at the side of HTS or the others. On the other hand, Turkish stance in here is totally, first, being loyal to the original settings of the military campaign to, have Afrin safe and secure for the people and also for Turkish citizens beyond the borders. What was the original objectives of Turkish military campaign? It was securing the border, it was countering terrorism, it was facilitating safe and volunteer return of the refugees and also IDPs to their own land. And in accordance with this, just having the terror cells be kicked out from the region. So if HTS challenges the current status quo, I think Turkey will first check exactly what sort of challenge Turkey is facing. In this picture, HTS was really reluctant not to challenge Turkish interests. On the other hand, there had been something really important, and it's a definitive input to the equilibrium. It was what HTS for the first time has become a party that has attached to PKK-YPG's positions in Tel Rifat region. So right after this time, if HTS starts challenging YPG in accordance with their ideology, because they have radical ideologies totally rejecting YPGs, well, it's something different. So Turkey will observe exactly what's going on, what sort of agenda HTS and other affiliated groups are pursuing, and second thing, what projections Turkey may face. Please let me remind one thing really important here. Afrin's security is directly relevant to the security of Hatay City. If there happens an escalation in Afrin, and if we have terrorist cells or radical organizations, doesn't matter who, well, they can easily infiltrate to the border and start attacking military posts as civilian in Hatay City. And that was why Turkey started this military campaign within the frame of Operation Olive branch. And I see that Turkey will not permit an escalation in the region, but first we'll try to insert intelligence organization to establish a sort of balance and equilibrium, persuade the actors to be more calm, and contribute to building a safe environment and be neutral in the region, not to, agitate or provoke any party. In this sense, what I see is that Syrian National Army must have lessons learned, must consult with Syrian interim government led by Abdurrahman Mustafa, and in the meantime, they should question themselves. This is one thing Turkey will push Syrian National Army. On the other hand, Turkish foreign policy options are very clear. If Turkey is dealing with a legitimate actor, mostly it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs dealing with it. But if it's an illegitimate one, but, that should be negotiated or that should be touched, it's the intelligence organization. So I see that Turkish intelligence organization will push hard to HTS to be more calm and withdraw back to Idlib and not to challenge the other, because this situation, maybe we will talk later, will have great consequences in Syria, directly challenging the security of the Syrian citizens, which are really deprived because of hunger, because of lacking humanitarian aids and also shelters.
Yeah, people were afraid. I watched a lot of videos from Afrin and Aziz region. So they were asking Turkey to come to the help. But as you said, instead of using arms, Turkey used other means and has been trying to convince this group to withdraw from this region. And every day, every night, we see different news. Most recent, I just saw 15 vehicles and leaving. So we don't know what is really happening. But as you said, it has consequences. It showed us many facts. One of them was the weakness of the Syrian opposition, I believe, in that region. So they have not resisted well to this organization. On the other hand, we don't know what was the reason behind of this quick advance of the HTS, but we'll see. It also brought the question of establishing a Syrian unity, which is Turkey and Russia is pushing for in Astana process. So I think it should be a priority for all the nations, because this terror group can extend its power to different regions, and it will be a challenge for everyone. I don't know, Kadir, what do you think about the consequences? This will provide some risks and also maybe some opportunities for Turkey, for the Syrian diplomacy, and for establishing a Syrian unity government, or an arrangement at least, which will bring all the sides together.
Yes, I mean, this has been the long-running problem, of course, of uniting the opposition, having them as one front, at least have one policy for them to be able to negotiate with the regime and be part of the constitutional process, etc., the political diplomatic process. But these kind of infighting, scenes of infighting, create new challenges and go against the unity of the opposition, if there is any sort of unity. But it reminds everyone that Syria should not be forgotten in many ways. Like, even the most stable regions can be threatened. HTS is a reality there. This is my question to, again, Professor Aslan, that there were earlier, maybe a couple of years ago, when Turkey intervened and controlled these areas, including Idlib, and negotiated with Russia and Iran to have presence there, and refused when Assad tried to push Turkey out of this region, and they held their ground, and it's been successful. It's been relatively calm. But there were criticisms of Turkey then and even today, like, why is Turkey not fighting HTS? And you already alluded to this fact. Idlib is a very complex region with so many, so many different areas being controlled by different groups. Perhaps you can kind of address that a little bit, if you can, Turkey's policy on HTS especially. And you mentioned that when Turkey opposed pro-Iran, pro-Assad groups, Assad forces in this region, to be able to keep calm, right? Because there's millions of people here. They will rush to Turkey and create much bigger problems for Turkey as well as Europe and the Mediterranean eventually. And that ended up helping HTS. Again, this is one of the criticisms from one side. Of course, there's no shortage of criticism of Turkey. People do not invest enough on the Syrian peace process, or pushing, for a diplomatic resolution in a big way, in a serious way. They prioritize other things, including Iran nuclear issue, Ukraine, other things. So that's besides the point. But so in the context of recent instability, Bora, I believe, we've been talking about this for so long, right? That there's not enough attention. Countries need to pay attention. This situation is not sustainable in the long run. we're gonna repeat that, Bora. I agree with you. I mean, there is no question about that. But perhaps also Professor Aslan could tell us a bit more, maybe nuances in the Turkish policy in this region and challenges in this region.
I would like to, just underline one issue, remarkable, because it was 1 or 2 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I had an interview with several individuals coming from Idlib, and it was a workshop in Azaz city of Syria. And all argued or claimed that there were US intelligence cells directly communicating with HTS. Well, it may be a conspiracy theory. I don't know. I have not seen any. On the other hand, we have witnessed some indicators that the US was in Idlib, facilitating, maybe shaping the ground, and they have conducted well-established intelligence-based organizations targeting the leadership of ISIS. So Idlib is not a location that neither of the countries who are party to this conflict are not interested. I mean, all does have a hand, an eye on Idlib, and also offering. This is one fact we have to confess right now. The second thing, when you talk about Syria in general, but particularly Idlib and Afrin, it's really a natural course to have criticism from the Europeans, the US, or maybe some sort of public opinion makers that Turkey is cooperating with this one, with the other one, Turkey is not providing security, etc. But we have to remember one thing. Syria, if you go through the actual conflict resolution literature, every conflict does have a duration like 8 years. And this conflict is now experiencing, the 11th year, and 12th is approaching. So it's not that much easy to tell exactly what's going on in Syria, which is de facto divided under, into 2.5 zones. And now HTS clearly argued that it's not at 3.5, but it's 4 zones, directly indicating their sphere of influence in Idlib and trying to expand it. Another issue, just before a criticism to Turkey, we have to remember the composition of the external actors directly challenging the security in the region. Think that Iran is actually in Syria surrounding Idlib province, Russia, and very close to Afrin, by the way, just at the south of Tel Rifat region. Russia is currently in a war in Ukraine, but did not withdraw any mass, any military unit other than specific ones. So they do have the potential in Syria that they can change and challenge the existing status quo. And the US, they decreased their manning in military, but still in Syria and providing the major bulk of military assistance to PKK, YPG, or PYD, whatever you say. So under these circumstances, Turkey should be expected to defend the interests, secure the borders, and if there happens a sort of challenge to Turkish sense of security, Turkey should be expected to intervene again. It may be a direct one or indirect one. The cost-effective, approach in here is indirect one, either through intelligence or controlling some certain elements in the region. But if you take HTS and the current, mobilization, there has been something different. Internal micro-level units in Syria started mobilizing themselves for 2 reasons. The first one is to have more income from the money flow in Syria, because Syria is under the heavy pressure of Caesar Act. And once you capture a further checkpoint in region, you have more income due to corruption. And HTS is not an exception. HTS is as much corrupted as the other elements in Syria, if compared to PYD, YPG, or the others, doesn't matter, or the regime. In this picture, what I believe, Turkey will try to first establish a balance in the region and maybe start a sort of transformation in security sector, mainly taking Syrian national army be more accountable and more disciplined at the north. Because if Syrian national army continues as fragmented as this picture offers us, well, it's clear that they will lose it. Because once HTS started the advance towards Afrin and later than Azaz, Russians attacked to the south of Idlib. That's a fact. So it's a vulnerability to have an internal fight. Doesn't matter which SNA group it is, or if it's HTS versus any other armed group, doesn't matter. What I believe is that Turkey will now start a transformation process, mainly pushing really hard by means of Syrian internal government. This should be expected and will be. The second thing, Turkey's stance is very clear in here. Well, Turkey has focused on the long-term projections, not the short-term. What's the long-term expectation of Turkey? To have Syrians back their country. And for this, there's a conditionality. It's the political process be achieved in general. If Assad regime is persuaded not to halt the process, well, then why not? But it will not be within maybe months or years, maybe a bit more. But this is exactly the projection of Turkish government right now. Facilitate the political process and also encourage Syrian people go back their country and, build up their own land. So for this reason and for this course, I believe Turkey will start pushing hard the political process, mainly consultations with Russia and Iran through the Astana process. This is what I see in short run.
Yeah, I think also Turkey doesn't want to spend its energy, its resources to Syria, especially when Turkey is heading to an elections. Plus, there are other issues in the agency, the tension with Greece. Although I don't personally expect a military conflict right now, but maybe we can say that Turkey's focus is now in the Aegean coast. But Kadir, do you agree with that? I mean, at the beginning of this escalation in Afrin, many people thought that Turkey would intervene, or many people expected Turkey to send military troops to confront HTS. But as Murat Aslan underlined, Turkey is looking for Syrian opposition groups to take care of the responsibility and control and protect the region and protect the people there. But do you think it's likely under these circumstances, as again Murat Aslan said, there is a problem with the discipline, the commitment, many issues there. Do you think this will be the way that Turkey will try to keep things under control, or should we expect a direct intervention soon?
Well, it's difficult. It has been difficult for more than 10 years, and that's been the source of the divisions in the opposition, has been the source of sort of some failure, I should say. And there's no reason to, well, let me put it this way, it's hard to blame the opposition, because this was a country under, repression for decades. And there was no organizational, civil society or the society underneath the Assad regime were not really organized. They couldn't come together anyway in the first place, and that so anyway, we can find some excuses for this, but as Professor Aslan indicated, it's been many years, and this kind of infighting does not benefit the opposition itself. Turkey has been criticized in the past for not allowing the opposition groups to govern themselves, right? So it's a funny situation when now Turkey is expected to kind of come in and take care of security, fight HTS, and also unite the opposition, but also allow them to rule. So I agree with Professor Aslan, like you need security first, right, on the ground, achieved by these opposition groups. That could be the basis of stability, political stability, and negotiations down the road. And for that to happen, I guess they would need to do something better under, Turkish guidance. And, if HTS is able to come in and change the dynamics in a place that is so close to the Turkish border, and the opposition groups are not able to push back or are not able to take care of it on their own, that's a problem. And how are we going to expect a broader, major political process to succeed in the medium term or long term? So that kind of unified front, creating it's going to be hard when also then there's the, I think, structural thing where if there's no serious political process, these armed groups are going to try to increase their power for the day when it comes to have sort of at the table gain more politically. So it's a vicious cycle in many ways. It's when there's no political deal on the horizon, or the processes are too weak, or like the constitutional process, I don't even know where it is. I don't know how many, so maybe that's my ignorance, but there is no really light at the end of the tunnel. So these groups are not able to motivate themselves and focus for the future. So there are all these problems, I think, for any kind of solution to come soon. But I agree with you, Bora, that Turkey cannot really afford instability in this region. Turkey has already indicated its goal to create this secure, safe 30 kilometers belt, right, along the border. And, it has promised continued operations against PKK and PYD. It has been doing some of that. It has been doing that in Iraq. It's threatened to do it in Syria, Northern Syria as well. And like you said, there are elections coming up, and Turkish electorate is focused on the economy. But if these things flare up, it's not good for Turkish politics, and you're gonna have many more problems. So I agree with both of you, but I don't. It's hard to, like, after 11 years, Professor Aslan, you know this story really well. You've gone to you talk to these people, opposition leaders in Turkey. You know how hard this process has been. So it's hard to be optimistic. Maybe I could ask you, like, is there something that to be optimistic about in the near future?
Well, okay, optimism or pessimism, but we have to focus on the realist view of.
I think I'm being too realist. That's what
yeah. I mean, I don't want to say optimism or pessimism, because what we have is very clear in our pocket. The first thing, we have 4 regions and heavily backed by external states, external actors. This is one fact. We have Iran, Russia, United States, and Turkey directly driving, Syria to somewhere, and naturally they want to defend their interests, and it's clear, crystal clear. On the other hand, there is a great division among the internal actors. Assad is a great challenge, especially for Syrian civilians, and the other factions, armed factions, are clearly, try to, survive themselves. This is one fact. In this picture, if external actors cannot agree, and we see that the United States is playing really on PKK, PYD or YPG. Russia and Iran is insistent on keeping Assad regime on Syria, and Turkey, Turkey is supporting Syrian National Army, though Turkey also is supporting the political process, maybe more committed than the other external actors. And just because of that, I don't understand why many Europeans criticize Turkey, because Turkey does have the burden of Syrians in Turkey and encourage them to go back to their country. But it's the Europeans who have a sympathy to PKK, PYD, and they prevent especially Syrian Arabs returning their homes. So there are paradoxes in this picture. So to be more optimistic, I believe, we must see a light in the tunnel of political resolution on this incompatibility. On the other hand, there's one other fact. We had a clear project scanning exactly what Syrians are concerned, what they think of going back to their home, etc. With no exception, all the interviewed individuals, they said, well, as far as Assad is governing the overall Syria, they will not go back. This is very clear from their sentiments. The second thing, we asked the same questions to the Kurds living in Urfa city, and just wondered, PYD is usually depicted as a Kurdish organization by the United States and European states, and they said, no, we will not go back as far as PKK is over there, because they forced us to leave our land. Just remember what James Jeffrey did 3 years ago. He gathered all Kurdish elements of Syrian society and proposed this idea, but they rejected it. So in this picture, Syrian case must first be resolved by the Syrians, and it's the only way to resolve it by means of Geneva process under the decisions of the UN Security Council. The second thing, if there happens a military escalation in region, everything will mess up in terms of humanitarian sufferings, in terms of authorities of the current, de facto or legitimate or illegitimate, doesn't matter, organizations or units in Syria. And in the meantime, external actors will pay a lot to the costs. So we must prevent a further escalation, but focus on this political resolution. Otherwise, Syria will keep its current status quo maybe for many years in future.
Okay, Murat Aslan, thank you very much. Kadir, Ustun, thank you very much. It's a long story, but I think we talked about the recent Afrin escalations details. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.